Hey folks, it's Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I'm John Ritlin. I'm back with more of my top 20 worst WCW rivalries list. This is part two. I'm kind of doing these periodically when I'm able to because I've been working a lot, and I mean a lot the past month. And quite frankly, I'm not really going to have that much time off, even for the rest of the year. So I'm recording these when I'm able to and just uploading them. So hope you enjoy. This is basically going to be 12 through whatever, probably 12 through 7, depending on how many I go through. I'm going to go to about 10, maybe 10 and a half minute time limit. But we start off with Goldberg versus Brett. Now, I will admit, at first, when Brett did the whole thing with the metal plate on his, on his stomach to stop the spear and everything and knock Goldberg out, that was great. The promo leading up to that was great because Brett, not the best talker, still pretty good at building up. And I mean, he was in Toronto, so it was great. A great Canadian home crowd, and they got a pretty sizable crowd there, especially when WCW at that point. That was, I want to say it was about I want to say it was the 23rd of March, 1999. It might have been the 30th, but I remember it was in March. I remember Brad came out, cut this great promo, steel plate and everything. So Goldberg hits him, and he's knocked out. That was great. And then Brad suffered like a leg injury, like a shin or knee injury or something. I forget. Maybe it was calf injury. And then Owen tragically passed away. Unfortunate accident, and which is all I'm going to say. Brett took some time off and then came back, and then they kind of started to slot Brett towards the main event. He became the world champion of Mayhem. What a horrible event that was. Great for Brett, not a great event overall. And then start building the Brett versus Goldberg at Starrcade. Brett and Goldberg became tag team champions. And then the kick heard around the world at Starrcade. Brett got hit with a misplaced mule kick by Goldberg, side kick, whatever you want to call it, and Brett got a concussion from that, and I swear got another concussion in the match because he kept holding his head. It was hard to watch. Brett did end up winning and walking away with the world title, and it was really bizarre, but he only wrestled a few more times, and the accumulation of injuries forced him to retire. The feud got the legs cut out from under it in part because of Brett's injury, but also the feud wasn't really going anywhere. I don't know if it really would have gone much of anywhere had Brett not been injured. To me, it just didn't work, and it didn't help that Goldberg was not a great worker. Brett was an incredible worker, and the end of the feud was the end of Brett's career. So that's what's unfortunate. So that's where I'm going to leave this as number 12. Number 11, The Revolution versus the Filthy Animals. First off, any Shane Douglas led group in 1999 is not going to work. The triple threat in 98 was decent. 97, 98. It was decent, but I mean, Shane, especially in 99, he was such a mess. I mean, mentally and physically, especially. Maybe he was going through some tough stuff in his life, but I know that he clearly had his demons, his alcohol, and his drugs. But yeah, the Revolution was bad. Eddie Dean, Saturn, and I will say Benoit was involved in that too. I don't know. I mean, the Revolution so blends together for me. And then you had the Filthy Animals, which were Ray, Conan, Kidman, and shit. I want to say there was somebody else in there. I don't remember. I do know that it was a shit feud. It was a shit feud between everything was factions in 1999. Whether it was WWE, ECW, WCW. It was, and I'm putting WWE at the top of the list because they had some really shit factions, and so WCW. Don't get me wrong. It was just a feud that went nowhere, and nobody benefited from it. Number 10, NWO Black and White versus the NWO Wolfpack. Pretty much the same thing. It's like, let's take the NWO Black and White, which was really cool and everything, but by 98 was really starting to get out of control. Well, actually, by 98 had already worn out its welcome. And let's take the 40-something members of that team. And then let's take some members like making your sister or your little brother part of the NWO, and let's take the Wolfpack and put them over here. So it's black and white versus red and black. Besides the NWO Wolfpack theme, that was it. You know where I ride. It's like I ride with the black and white, you know. And I mean, I just got this shirt from WWE.com because unfortunately my WCW one was so worn out. The feud just never went anywhere, and it's like one of the only times they even really clashed much was, I want to say, in the three-team War Games match at Fall Brawl '98, which was a disaster because you had Warrior come in through the trap door, and that was crap. It just, nothing ever became of it. And then by late '98, early '99, they fused the groups back together as a core group, and then the group still grew even bigger. And then you still had, like, you had the Wolfpack, Wolfpack Hollywood Wolfpack or whatever, and then you had another black and white faction. Nobody knew what was going on. The Wolfpack black and white feud did not go anywhere. It was crap. Number 9, Goldberg versus Jericho. Jericho did a great job building this thing. The problem is Goldberg didn't want to play ball and did not feel that Jericho should be somebody to beat him. They should have at least done something where, when they were building it up, it was great. It's like Jericho was doing a great job healing up and everything, and Goldberg took himself a little too seriously, didn't recognize it was entertainment. If they had put it on pay-per-view and had Goldberg just eat him alive in like 5 minutes, it would have been fine. Jericho could have gotten in a little bit of offense. Goldberg could have eaten him alive and whatever, but it would have been a good pay-per-view payoff. They didn't want to do that, and it was stupid. It was stupid. Beyond words, it was stupid. Because Jericho really was on the money in this feud with Dean Malenko before this and his feud with Goldberg here, because he was just such a great cocky heel. And then they pulled the rug out from under him, and then he was never the same after that. So it was just stupid. And number 8, Ernest Miller versus anyone, because Ernest Miller was a dog shit worker. Why Ernest Miller? Besides friendship with Eric Bischoff, which I guess I read something on Twitter, and if you read on Twitter, it must be true, but I guess it was a quote at one time from Bischoff, something about if Ernest Miller had come along 3 or 4 years before he did, he could have been a household name. No, Ernest Miller was absolute shit. I mean, just as a wrestler and as a TV personality, I don't mean as a person. I haven't really heard people say that Ernest Miller's a bad guy. I don't know if he is, and I don't care if he is. His TV personality was shit. He was not entertaining by any stretch of the imagination, yet they felt the need to keep him on TV and make him the commissioner or the on-air president or something like that. And it made no sense, because then he was and he wasn't. And he was not a good wrestler. I mean, he may have been a good athlete as far as being a karate champion, but he was not any good as a wrestler. He was horrible. They brought him into WWE for a bit, and he was a commentator on Velocity. They made him a wrestler for a little bit, was in the Royal Rumble in 2004, and his little friend Lamont, I believe, I don't remember what the guy's actual name was, the actual talent playing him, but his giant wig and his 140-pound frame were actually more over than Ernest Miller was. But yeah, Ernest Miller in WCW was shit. I mean, the guy was just bad. His teaming up with Glacier to face, I believe, Wrath and Mortis. Boy, that was another feud that was just bad. Oh yeah, I'll get to that one later. Spoiler alert. God, the guy was just bad. I mean, Ernest Miller, what was Ernest Miller besides a joke? I mean, he was better than Honky Tonk Man, I'll say that much, because at least Ernest Miller seemed to enjoy what he was doing and seemed to be liked by some of his peers. Can't really say that about Honky Tonk Man. But yeah, Ernest Miller versus anyone, just bad. Really, really bad stuff. And number 7, Hogan versus Savage. This is not a knock against Savage at all. Savage was an incredible worker. And it's a damn shame that Vince could not pull his head out of his ass and get him back to WWE to be in the Hall of Fame in like 2008 or something like that. Because that's one thing that's shameful to me. It would have been nice because Randy could have delivered probably one of, if not the greatest speech of all time. But in WCW, Hogan could never let Savage get his moment, especially during his first title run, because Hogan had to be the guy to cover Randy in his limelight and everything, and overshadow Randy. And even in '92, when Randy beat Ric Flair in a hotter angle than Hogan versus Sid, all due respect to Sid, Hogan Sid was the main event of Mania 8, and Savage and Flair was the underneath of it. It's like the fourth, fifth match on the card, which was ridiculous. And in WCW, all of Randy Savage had one title reign. It was a month. His other one or two title reigns that he had, no, two title reigns, one day. And guess what? Hogan beat him both times. Because Hogan's a shameful individual and could not let anybody else have the limelight over him. It was ridiculous. That's not to say that Randy maybe wouldn't have been fine with losing a title. I mean, he was like a 3-time WCW champion, but he could have been so much more. And no, Hogan wouldn't allow that. So that is why that feud is number 7. So that's where I'm going to leave this off. Do you agree with what I've said so far on these lists? Do you disagree? Like, share, comment, and subscribe. My Twitter link is in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.